Viewer contributions make local programming possible on WNIN. Become a member of WNIN with your contribution so we can continue to make this programming available. Visit WNIN.org and click on the donate button.
Welcome to WNIN Newsmakers. I'm April Nading. We'll be joined by former news anchor Brad Byrd and get his thoughts on local news coverage of a recent chemical fire in Newburgh. WNIN Newsmakers is up next. Welcome to WNIN Newsmakers. I'm April Nading. On September 6th, a fire at PBTT Corp in Newburgh created hazardous conditions for first responders and then local residents. Former news anchor Brad Byrd posted a piece on Facebook about the news media coverage of the chemical fire, and he joins us now to talk about that. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you very much, April. Good to see you, and thanks for the invitation.
And it's almost like we're working together
I
again.
I know. There you go.
So can you briefly summarize what you said in your Facebook post about the local news coverage?
Well, first and foremost, I was not looking for clicks.
Exactly.
But what I was stating in that post was my observation of what I was actually seeing. And what I was actually seeing was a flood of information and pictures of this cloud that eventually was determined to be a chemical cloud that prompted take shelter orders. And I was thinking, I started scanning the television channels, the local channels. I said, this is really looking serious, because you could see this, as you well know, they could see it in Kentucky. This was taking place in East Central Horry County. And I didn't see anything as far as cut-in. Now, one of the stations told me that they did put a crawl up, but that was a little bit later on in the process. But that initial, when it first broke out, and I believe it was about 2:40 p.m. on that Saturday, and that cloud was visible from miles away. You could see it from Kentucky, as I said. And what I was saying was that, okay, we certainly would not send reporters, I think I can speak for most stations, into a danger zone if emergency officials would say, no, you can't come this far, especially considering the nature of what was going on. I saluted those first responders, because they were in a danger zone, and they went right into that area, and they had a situation where they were calling in outside fire departments. EFD was called out. They were trying to get help from Davis County, Kentucky firefighters. And I'm thinking, my gosh, where's the local broadcast? Just an indication that this is what we are seeing. They have tower cams. Clearly, the public was sending in incredible video of that cloud. And they were it looked like they were from a safe distance. And at least I'm speaking from my past experiences, we'll stay away. The last thing we want to do is interfere with first responders,
right,
or put the public at risk. But part of our mission is to inform the public. This is not an attack on social media. In fact, I credited Evansville Watch, because they basically got the word out in the early stages. But I was not seeing cut-ins or any type of local coverage until much later in the process. And it just seemed, I used the word surreal. It just seemed odd and strange. Some people were commenting, and I knew that it was an impact, because overwhelming response on my professional page. Evansville Watch later shared that post, and it seemed to be the same question. They're not giving us information. Where are they? And they were talking about everybody collectively. Evansville First Watch basically shared it the very next day. And I think it was a learning experience. I think I would hope that the newsrooms were having discussions on Monday,
right,
to just say, well, what can we do to make sure this doesn't happen again? I understand staffing across the board is a concern, But we still have telephones. We can call people in. We can assign people to come in, give them a comp day or whatever if they need it, or overtime. But we need it somewhere on the ground, not necessarily right next door to the fire, but also just basically in the vicinity. Here is what we know. You can see for yourself. We're trying to get answers. As it turned out, the Take Shelter advisory went out, and that was constantly changing. And a lot of people were saying, we had no idea. We first learned about this from Nashville TV, or we heard about it in Indianapolis. I don't know how they heard about it, probably through social media.
Right.
And this was not an indictment on social media at all.
No.
I mean, people were sharing information of what they saw.
But they should have been getting some of that information from the local broadcast.
Well, yeah, the local broadcast. And I know that the EMAs and the firefighters had a huge task. Their first order of business is, we've got to figure out a way to contain this, because it was a chemical, it was a plant that had chemicals in it. I put the word chemical plant, the phrase, and somebody said, it's not a chemical plant. Well, there were chemicals in it: zinc, magnesium, apparently cyanide products. And kids were out, and I just don't understand why, where were we? And it was easy for me, I guess, to say that, but I've been in situations like that before.
Right. It's not your first rodeo as far as, so I guess one of the questions is, when should TV stations put out some kind of crawl or make a special report? I mean, what are the parameters?
If I saw a cloud like that, which I did, at the very least get a crawl out immediately. We are working to get answers on this. We'd be hitting the phones, of course. And just based on what I was seeing on the social media posts everywhere, it wasn't just Evansville Watch, people were asking, what is that? Have you seen this? But to get hardcore information, I mean, Evansville Watch basically, I've always said, is a great source for broadcasters or digital producers, just to get them, here's what we're seeing. Now, there are some things that I'm sure they would agree. We won't go and run with information until we confirm it. But we can say, here's what we're seeing. Here's what you are seeing. This is what you're wanting to know. It's going on. We're on it.
Do you think they should have maybe had the crawl or some kind of cut-in as soon as they found out that it involved chemicals?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, if it was confirmed chemicals. I think it would have been justified. I'd never seen a cloud quite like that. We've had some major fires right here in downtown, or north of downtown.
Right.
But this was different. It was extremely thick, and it was kind of low to the ground. And later on, I can't remember which agency said the winds that day were kind of closer to the ground. So it was keeping that cloud not right on top of the ground, but as it turned out, there was an ash problem with it. But even if it's reassuring that, stay indoor, people were wondering, well, we have air conditioning, so that just suck it into the house. Should we close our windows? I mean, we're still in summer somewhat, and but that just didn't happen.
Right. I mean, because there are a lot of the concerns is, okay, I can't send my kids outside right now, but when?
Yes.
And is it okay tomorrow?
Well, the issue too, some kids were outside. Some kids were playing baseball, from what I understand. The kids were outside.
While
it was a Saturday
going on.
afternoon.
Right.
So that was a concern, and I just think that I think it at least warranted not trying to get anybody in trouble or anything like that, but just let's have a discussion about that. How can we, the next time? Now, we've been in situations, as you well know, before, weather events, and we catch a lot of flack, all of us do, it did, in my case did, when we interrupt programming for a severe thunderstorm or a tornado. We have to go on the air. And you ask any meteorologist, if we've got a tornado warning in the metro, they're on the air.
Right.
And that is to protect folks. And usually people who will complain about that, I understand where they're coming from, but how would you feel if that was bearing down about 2 miles from your home and we're not preempting a television show to let you know?
Right, because that's part of the, I mean, I guess that comes down to even what is the role of a broadcast news station, is to inform,
Correct.
protect to some
Yes.
extent.
Well, TV news began as a public service when it first came about. I grew up in the early 50s. I learned a lot in the 60s as a teenager about the importance of unbiased, clear, focused, understanding news. And we have to stay on that track. And it's of course, news is a moneymaker for a lot of stations. But it still comes down to doing the right thing, and that was the point I was trying to make.
And that's why I was wondering, you know, like you said, it wasn't for you to get clicks or have people share your post. This was to put out there your thoughts and concerns.
Right, and a lot of people, I think, were getting information, but it was, from what I was seeing, and social media is a great tool if you're trying to see what people are saying to each other, not necessarily saying to you. And I was getting comments like, thanks, I let my uncle, hypothetically, Charlie, know what was going on. And it just, that's what in this case was missing. It was not a weather event, but then again, it was kind of like a weather event because the weather was keeping that cloud a little low.
Right.
And that's not, I'm not saying anything, there are no warnings. We don't have wind warnings unless it is a tornado or a thunderstorm.
Well, it was still life-threatening and
It
affecting
potentially,
a
yes.
bit large
And the
group.
question is, mystery is the thing that just has always driven me to try to find answers. If there's a mystery in something that I'm looking right at, that's when we have to ask the questions and question the answers. So.
Well, and I know even from when I was in broadcast news that they are even more now short-staffed, especially on the weekends.
Yes.
But what do you think happened?
Well, I don't know. And far be it from me. See, I was making an observation. I was asking the same question. Why did this happen? It did happen. Right. It seems to me, just watching. And I started out as a weekend news anchor. And up in Fort Wayne, I was weekend anchor at FIE for 2.5 years, then did weeknights at 25 in January of '78 all the way through 2024. But on weekends, we would just pick up the phone, especially when I was greener than the grass out there, and just say, we need some help here if there's something major like that going on. Even weather coverage back then was different. But we've learned the hard way that if you're not warned, I mean, we dodged a bullet. There were no deaths in this that I know of. I don't know what the after effects will be, but from what I understand, the big concern, it seemed like the big concern, quoting a statement that the Courier and Press had out later, I think on that Sunday, that ash was an issue. And I'd heard stories that they had to do cleanup on some properties of just what was coming down. So.
Well, and speaking of the Courier, I think there was some pushback that maybe people thought that you were pointing the finger at all the local media, but you were really, again, you were mostly talking about
broadcast.
Broadcast.
Yeah. And I mentioned cut-ins. And I wrote columns for the Courier for many years back in the 2000s. And I mean, they've got great reporters there. They're under pressure like everyone in local news is. But the overall perception that I saw from a television broadcast sense, in all due respect, was, what's going on here?
Right. Because that's one of the great things about TV. They can interrupt and get the information out. And to your point, we were talking earlier that there was football going on. So there would have been a lot of people watching.
There would have been a lot of people watching, but I'm not saying on a situation like this right at the beginning is just come in, possibly with a crawl immediately. If you get someone out there at a safe distance, it seemed like west of this incident, In the beginning, like if you were on Burkhart Road, you probably saw it. If you were up on the interstate, if you were driving down the Lloyd Expressway, you almost had a front row seat if you were driving east. But okay, you say like you saw it from your car, pull over, you could call home and say, hey, I'm seeing this on the horizon and I'm heading that way, if you have a loved one or a friend living out in that area. I think people would go to, obviously, their phones. That's changed everything. But I think there were a lot of people who had their TV on, or would have turned their TV on and just say, well, I wonder if they're doing anything.
Right. And what do I need to know?
Yeah. What is the information? And if you don't have the information, don't speculate. That's the one thing that I've always said, don't speculate. Well, this could be a deadly chemical fire run for your lives or whatever. If I don't know, I'm not going to put it on the air. In tragedies like the November 6th tornado, we did not even put anything about fatalities on until an agency, a first responder agency, first responder agency actually stated for the record, this is what we have.
Right, and confirmed it.
Yeah.
Well, what do you think this situation says about the state of local news?
Well, things are changing so fast. I think the pressure on corporate America and broadcast that it's putting on local stations is obvious. And I think there are a lot of good people in local news in this market. And I'm definitely not even intimating that the younger generation really didn't know what they were doing. That is not the situation. I just think we can learn because we all were there at one point. But I think there's a lot of pressure right now. Research is showing that local TV news, a lot of young people, I can tell, they just don't watch. I mean, they've got the phones and they can get their information they want. We have customized the way we take our news in. We can just do it right on our phone. I don't want to go to abcnews.com, but oh wait, I'll go to, let's see, what am I going to go? I'm going to go to TikTok. And a lot of people get their information from social media. So.
Well, and it's also, like you mentioned, corporate America. You know, at one point, all the TV stations were owned locally, and radio stations too, and then they're sold and it becomes corporate, and it just changes the complexion of the whole newsroom itself.
Well,
I mean,
and we've got a merger going on right now. This is public record. It's and that involves Nexstar and Tegna. Of course, Gray has obtained. The owner of FI has obtained WEVV. I've always been of the thought, after 52 years as a broadcast journalist, the fewer sources that you have of information disseminating news in your homeland, in your market, the less competition there is. And it's just like, I'm not saying these are monopolies or anything like that, but when we have, like at one time we had 4 clear, distinct local stations in the market, 44, 7, 25, and 14. I think it was good for the market. I mean, you had more choices. It's just like, and
if there's more competition, they try harder.
They try a little bit harder. Well, I think they try hard now, but it's just a different type of. I just feel it's different.
Right. Well, I mean, obviously it is.
Yeah, and well, I feel it's different from what I'm seeing.
Right.
And but that's not. I don't think anybody on the broadcast side was. Everyone I've talked to, I've been approached in like grocery stores and saying, I liked what you said. That's exactly what I was thinking. And I said, well, I didn't use any call letters. I didn't know names. I was not throwing people that I have worked with or competed against under the bus. I just felt like I was making an observation of what I was seeing as it was happening. So.
Well, I even saw someone had posted, I think somebody who works at a TV station was saying they were surprised that there weren't even any national stations here or national networks.
Well, it did not. People were bringing out, were mentioning the tragedy in Ohio what was that, East Palestine?
With
It was
the
a train.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
I hope I pronounced that right. That goes back away. Forgive my memory on that. But I thought that I was looking at the networks too, but we didn't have hardly any networks on. I know NBC Nightly News was on. Didn't see anything there. Football was in the early evening. Everyone had football on. CW had football on. And I said, well, okay, and viewers are watching, and there were some crawls at that point.
Right.
But in the early going, well, I didn't see anything.
Yeah. So what do you think? I assume at the stations they have some kind of procedures for when there are weather emergencies and alerts. Do they have the same kind of thing for covering non-weather emergencies? Is there a plan?
Well, it's right here. That's my plan. I don't go to a guidebook and say, well, okay, let's see. Fifth Third Bank is on fire, and there's it's started on the 3rd floor. It's going up. Should I cut in for that? And no, it's an instinct. It's a decision that you have to. It really starts from the top and goes down. And I think it's not like we've got to be. Peter, I always like to report or quote what Peter Jennings one time said: "I'd rather be second and right instead of first and wrong." And so we try to be very careful, but we want, on a situation like this where there is potential danger, we want to get on the air, but be honest at the same time with the viewer. This is what we know because we're having trouble getting information. Understandably, firefighters are extremely busy right now. They literally have to focus on the job at hand. And this was a big job that they faced. That
oh my gosh, yes.
That was not tapped out until I think about 3:45 to 4 in the morning the next day. Yeah. And I salute them. And any reporter or journalist who was out there that night who was seeing, I support them. I did not want to turn it into it wasn't. If I had the same thing to do all over again, I'd do the same thing.
Yeah.
But
well, because it's an important conversation to have.
I think in this case it was. I pretty well have stayed out. I just talk about things. We're in a world today where especially, I think some folks, in all due respect, as far as social media, think they're in a private chat room when they're putting some of this out. And this is going out on the World Wide Web, folks. You don't know if you've got that public opened up, you have to be careful. And it's a situation in which, especially I've noticed on Facebook, AI, okay? They've killed off more people on those, those reels that run the strip there, at least, and so has passed away.
And
they didn't, but the first thing, I thought, oh my gosh. But then I instinctively go either to abcnews.com or nbcnews.com, CBS, nothing. Then I go to Google. And Google you have to be careful with a little bit too, but if there are enough stations across the country or news outlets who are confirming what I just saw on a reel, I feel a little bit more comfortable believing that.
Yeah, I know. I've gotten that way also. Somebody will post something that, I bet you didn't know this, la, 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 and I read it and I think, that just sounds really crazy. And I'll Google it and go to maybe even the New York Times or something
Social
just to
media,
see, and it's not true. Not true at all.
Well, social media can do wonderful things. I mean, it has saved lives. It has, it gives people a forum to have, hopefully, civil discourse. I'm not seeing much of that lately, but but it can do some wonderful things. But it's how we, as individuals, human beings, use this tool, and it really comes down to that.
Well, and in this case, like you said, it was a very helpful tool getting information out.
It was extremely helpful, and
There just needed to be more from other sources.
I put the credit right where, at least in those early stages, I give credit to Evansville Watch on that. They get it out. I first posted about Evansville Watch about 10 or 11 years ago, and I said the reason that I like Evansville Watch is, as a journalist, it's giving me suggestions of what I should do to confirm information. I would never take just raw scanner information. Shouldn't do that. You can't rebroadcast scanner information.
Right.
But it's like, I mean, that was the tool back in the days, you know, were those
The scanners.
were the scanners. But we would hold on.
Right.
Hold on, we got call downtown, we got to confirm this, or get somebody out there on the scene or wherever this is.
Well, Evansville Watch is kind of like the scanner on social media.
It sure is, yeah, and people look at it. I mean, the proof is in the pudding, but and that was the case that Saturday. And I thought, well, where's broadcast news at in all this? So
Right.
it got there, but it took a while.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time to
thank you
discuss
very-
this. I think it's some very great, very great thoughts about this, and it does need some.
I don't have all the answers, and I have posted stuff. I read it, reread it, and I'm thinking. My point is not to, especially on this, because it's the old saying. I believe in truth, credibility, and empathy. Putting myself in the shoes of others that I'm talking about, and try to live by that. And it's hard, but there's a lot of good people out there in local news and broadcast news, and journalists are really under the gun right now. They're very, very, very.
It's unfortunate.
Yep, very sad. So.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, April.
Great talking with you and working with you again.
All righty.
Thanks to Brad Byrd for joining us to discuss local news coverage. I'm April Nading. Thanks for watching WNIN Newsmakers.